All right, so I already explained what Flask is, but if you have forgotten, there is a link down below for the video that we showed in session. So we are going to create our first Flask app, and some of this you may have already done, but I'm going to start from the very beginning. Open up the file manager down here, and then I am going to go to our projects, and I am going to create a new folder called Web Dev, for short for web development. Okay, and after that, what I'm going to do is open up Visual Studio Code, VSCode 10. This is the first time I've opened it on this account, so it has a bunch of questions for me. I'm just gonna click through these. Okay, I'm gonna open up the folder that I just now created. So inside of our projects, I'm gonna open up WebDev. Full screen this by moving it up. I'm gonna say traverse all the offers, and yes. All right, so I have something blank. If you have a WebDev folder, you should probably have other files in there. The first thing I want to do is actually create a virtual environment for my Flask app. To do that, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to do pip install virtual. This might be already installed, but we'll see. Or env. Says it's already installed. All right, so we're going to create our virtual environment for Flask by typing in virtual env and then flask-web. Okay, that will create our virtual environment. You can see it up here that it's been created. Now we are going to activate our virtual environment, and the way that we've activated our virtual environment is by typing in source and then our directory here, flask env, bin activate. You'll notice that over here, and now it says that we are in the Flask virtual environment. Okay, now we want to install Flask, so we're going to say pip3 install Flask. This will install Flask just inside of the virtual environment that we just now created, and it won't mess with the version of Python that is on our computer, because Linux uses Python for operation of the computer, the operating system, and we don't want to mess with that. Okay, so we have Flask installed, clear the screen, we have a virtual environment. I'm going to actually close this. Actually, I'm going to close it by pressing X, because we might want to come back here and we want to make sure that the virtual environment is still open. So we're going to close it by pressing the X, not the trash can. So I'm going to close this, and now I am going to create a folder in our web dev called code. Okay, and inside of code, I'm going to create our Flask app and say app.py. Down here is asking me if I want to install the Python extensions. I'm going to say yes. And if you, just in case you don't have them installed, you should have them installed already, but I'm going to actually quickly install them and then jump back to my code. All right, so they're installed. I'm going to jump back over here to my code, and we are going to set up the beginning of our Flask app. So we're going to say from Flask import Flask render template. So we can use templates and request. So we're importing some objects from the Flask app that we just installed. Now we're going to say our app is going to be Flask underscore aim underscore. Okay, now we're going to create some routes. Simple route here, app route. This will be for the root of our app. We're going to call this route home. We'll return when someone goes to our app, it'll return our index. We're going to render template, and we're going to have the index.template, which we will create in a moment. All right, so we're going to say create another route here, app route. This will be for submitting. So this will be /submit, which we are going to use in our template in a minute. And then we're going to say the method for this are going to be post. Okay. All right. So the name of this function is going to be submit. Name is going to be equal to request type form. Actually put this in our template, of course, in a minute, and we will return an F string here, and it will say hello name, thanks for submitting. Okay, and finally at the bottom of our app, we're going to say name, there's two underscores there, equals main. Okay, this is basically saying if the name of this is the main, and we're going to use two equal signs, so we're checking equality, and now we're not setting a variable. If the name of this is main, meaning that it is being run as the main program and not a module, we are going to run the app in debug mode. Debug equals true. Okay. All right. So that's assuming we don't have any errors, and we'll check to see if we don't have any errors later. We actually run it. Assuming we don't have any errors, we're going to save this. We're going to save this. I'm pressing Control S, and I'm going to close out this extension install. All right. So assuming we don't have any errors, that's all we need for this simple app. Next, I'm going to create the template. So I'm here clicking on code. I'm going to create a folder called templates. I'm going to create another folder called static. All right. So in templates, I'm going to create create this index.html template that we reference in our app. So here I'm going to create a new file, index.html. Okay. And with Emmet, you can just use exclamation point to create a rough of a HTML document. Now, this document is going to look like HTML, but it will have some Flask tokens. So that's why it's not an HTML document. It's going to be a Flask template. All right, here we are going to change this document name to our welcome page. And here we are going to add a link, and we want a style sheet, but here's when we are going to actually add some tokens here. So we're going to add a Flask token by using these curly braces, and we're going to say URL for static. That's why we created the static folder over there. And the file name is going to be file name equals style SS. Make sure everything has a beginning and an end, two curly braces here, a parentheses here that ends there, static, and also styles are in quotation marks, single quotation marks. Okay, so now we're going to set up our form inside of our body. All right, so I'm going to create an H1 tag here, and we are going to say welcome to our site, and then we are going to have a quick paragraph here, and we are going to say please enter your name and submit the form to get a greeting. I'm gonna actually collapse this so I can see more, and you can see more. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm typing. Okay, a little bit easier. All right, now we're gonna create the form. We're gonna say form, and the action is going to be that submit path or route that we created. The submit route is gonna be /submit, so /submit, and the method, as we said over in our app, is going to be post. All right, so our label is going to be name. We're gonna have name here between this HTML text, and our input is going to be text type. ID is going to be name. The name is going to be name. Okay, ID is very important here. This is how JavaScript pulls particular element, but is also how we're going to pull the name in Flask. Okay, all right, so we are going to have a button at the bottom here, and it's going to be a type submit button, and it will say submit, and that is all of our HTML template. Now we're going to go over to static and create a bit of CSS. So the style, and this actually should say styles.css, sorry about that. We're going to create a file here called styles. The reason that this is static is in the static folder and not in the HTML folder, because this isn't going to change. Whereas inside of the templates folder, we can have variables and dynamic elements like this in here. Okay, so in our styles, we're going to have some simple styles here for this, our form. We're going to say our body is going to be font family with Arial and sans serif if we can't find Arial. Margin is going to be 40 pixels. Our background color is going to be F9. Text color is going to be pretty. Okay. For H1 tag, we are going to have a color of 5C67 F2. Okay, and we're going to format the form, style the form rather. Okay, on our form, we're going to have a background color of white. We are going to have a padding of 20 pixels. We are going to have a border radius 8 pixels. We are going to have a box shadow 0 for the top. 2 pixels, 5 pixels, and then an RGB value of 0.1. Okay, that'll be our box shadow for a form. Input specifically on text. Formatter. And this is going to be a width 100% minus 20 pixels. And a padding of 10 pixel. Missing semicolon here. Alright, margin top is going to be 5 pixels. Gonna have the semicolons at the end of each line. And we are going to have a border, 1 pixel, and it's going to be solid, and it's going to be the color CCC, semicolon. And then border radius is going to be 4 pixels. Alright, so lastly, we are going to style the button. So button, we are going to have a background color for CAF 50. It's going to have a blur none. It's going to have a color of light. It's going to have a padding at the top and bottom of 15 pixels and on the side of 32 pixels. Okay. It is going to have a text line of center. It's going to have a text decoration none. It's going to have a display of inline block. It's going to have a font size of 16 pixels. Gonna have a margin of 4 pixels up, 2 on the left and right, and then a cursor. I'm going to change the cursor to a pointer. Okay. Finally, we are going to set the style for when we hover over the button. You're going to change the background color when we hover to 4A049. Okay, light variation there. All right, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this by pressing Control S and save this template, Control S. All right, so now let's see if our Flask app works. We have our app, we have our template, we have some CSS. All right, so let's see if the app works. You're going to open up a terminal. Actually have a terminal open over here already from before, so we're going to close this new one that we created. All right, I'm going to put some quick settings here. We're going to export Flask app to app.py. So now if you echo Flask app, it's app.py. All right, so if you remember our code, we do an ls here, is in the code directory. I'm going to code, and now you should see your app, your static, and the templates. So now I'm going to say Flask run, and if we don't have any errors, anyone should start up a server. So where do we have our issues? Okay, so it says, oh yes, I have a issue here. I said methods when it was speaking, and I typed method. Let's just say methods. So let me save that. I'm going to go down here and clear, and let's try to run again. Okay, it says that it's running on this, so we are going to follow a link. It should open up a browser. If not, you can close that. All right, so this is everything for styling. Let's see if our app works. I'm going to put in my name here and see if we get any errors or if okay. And it says, hello, Roger. Thanks for submitting the form. Okay, so our app works, and that's pretty much it. If you jump back, you could, of course, add more things to static, like some JavaScript to validate the form. Of course, you can add more fields to the form so that you can collect more information. You'd of course can down here do something more interesting with the information that you pull from the form, but that's for a later lesson. You should get your simple app working.